Howdy ho and welcome to Rauta's videos. This time is kind of a twisted opinion video. It's also like a quick report what was going on at Steelhordes 2021, but also a quick preview to what is going with the Steelfest 2021. 2022. Cut you for a second there. Anyway, there's a lot of controversy going on with Steelfest 2022 and for a number of reasons. But before we get to that, I want to quickly recap how was Steelhordes 2021 and what was that fest all about. Now, because of COVID, lots of events had to be cancelled here in Finland as well, because basically there was a lot of restrictions going on and you really couldn't do a lot of things that were supposed to happen earlier. I mean, we got Steelfest 2020 and Steelfest 2021 cancelled because of COVID restrictions. So later on, when things got a little bit better, well, we couldn't have a Steelfest 2021 or actually 2020 lineup, but we would have Steelhordes with its own very Finnish lineup, because, you know, obviously traveling is, or at least was, and I guess still is, quite hard from country to country because of these restrictions, vaccinations, and everything. So, a couple of weeks ago, Steelhordes 2021 took place for the first time, that is, the whole event. And at this point, there has not been any kind of information revealed whether or not this was a one-time event only with this particular name, or whether or not there will be more fests coming with more with the same name. Basically, the idea was to have a festival in smaller scale. So instead of typical Steelfest event, there was only this open air stage. One stage having bands for 2 days. So basically only half amount of bands versus what your typical Steelfest is. And pretty much every band was originally supposed to come from Finland, with one exception, which had to cancel and then replaced with another Finnish name. That is, Destruction never played there. I mean, if you take a look at this renewed lineup here, it lacks a couple of bands that were being replaced. So for Friday there was 5 bands. Only 5 bands. That sounds kind of a little, but to be honest, it felt like a day full of events. I mean, it was supposed to start with Bone Hunter, but they couldn't do it. And then there was Warmoon Lord, Lion Runes, Sargeist, and Havukruunu. Havukruunu was replacing Satanic Warmaster as the headlining act, which might sound a little bit weird, but they played a nice show. Now, as I was doing interviews, I obviously missed, once again, some bands that I was supposed to see, like Warmoon Lord. I was also wanting to see Bone Hunter, but because of cancellation, couldn't do that. On Saturday, it started with DJ Menzig, the guy from Hordes and other bands. And then it was followed by Malo Morgul, Chamber of Unlight, Perdition Winds, Georgia Gill, and Horna. So one could say roughly some 25% of death metal versus rest being black metal. Horna was replacing Destruction, if my memory serves me well. I mean, I think it was like that, Horna on Saturday being for Destruction. And so there was no trash metal at all, well, it was supposed to be. However, I don't think people were having a bad time there. I mean, even though this wasn't the original lineup and a couple of quick time replacements had to be taken there, people having fun time. Not as many people as with Steelfest, but it's kind of a given because lacking international names and all. And not exactly maybe the warmest session or season for fests, you know, as it's been kind of a late August. That's usually the time when Finland already gets these autumn winds and people start putting their sweaters and all that stuff on, wearing jackets and all. It's not so much just, you know, hanging around with your t-shirts and shorts. Anyway, it was a good event, much like any other Steelfest event I've ever been, just with less bands and a little bit less audience. You know, what it comes to people having these, you know, hygiene things, you know, whatever you call these pump bottles, so you can just disinfect your hands and all that stuff. That was taken care of nicely, so it was not like you felt like you were in the middle of COVID season, but that was taken care of. And security, everything that was just nicely organized as ever. I could witness only one smaller fight, which I actually went to interrupt, and what I heard, they were not, you know, big problems at all. So basically, like-minded people seeing bands which just appeal to their favor of black metal and all, drinking beer and all that stuff. Kind of a cozy feeling, to be honest, and it felt like almost like nostalgic. I mean, haven't been to outside fests for more than 2 years now. So, and this was like the first fest I've been to roughly 17, 18 months. So taking part of this felt like weird, as if I was going back to something that happened in the past, even though it's less than 2 years in terms of festival anyway. But still felt like weird to see a lot of friendly faces, you know, seeing friends and making a few new ones along the way, and making interviews, and goddamn, it felt refreshing. And also having a nice Airbnb with good friends, a few beers and all that stuff, and, you know, food being delivered right there. I mean, it was like a weekend off, you know, from your normal routines, work and family and stuff like that. So I hope this is not one-time event, even though August, especially late August, can be a little bit challenging when it comes to outdoors. But I mean, it's not too cold or anything, very, very doable, especially when it was not raining, which is kind of likely to take place in Finland when we're getting closer to early autumn weeks and all that stuff. But that's about Steelhordes, a good fest, and didn't personally mind these replacements. After all, it was nice to see Havukruunu on a bigger stage, having better sound and all than previously, and some bands just totally nailed it with when it comes to mixing and, you know, overall sound, like Torture Killer, something really, really powerful with their death metal set. So seeing friends, seeing bands, and making a few interviews, 6 in total by the way, was some nice thing to do. All in all, 4 bigger interviews. I will explain them later on. And 2 quickie ones, something like I would call 5-minute quick ones. So something to expect, I guess, and I hope that you will like them. Then another part 2 of this video is about Steelfest 2022 controversy. Obviously this site still says Steelfest 2021 here, but 2022 in the menu. And this confirmed artists page is not updated in real time for rather obvious reasons. Now, I don't know how many people have been following the news, but the thing is, these kind of festivals always are prone to replacements, cancellations, and whatnot for various reasons. Some of them because, you know, things are sometimes booked, like double booked, and bands have other plans already, maybe going to studio, or maybe there's something else going on, and then there are these cancelled bands. Maybe because of threats and blackmailing, or just giving hard time because a certain band is supposed to play on stage with bands that not everybody can agree with. Which is totally understandable, after all, we're talking about extreme metal. But so far, the lineup looks really like killer. I mean, there are 50 bands, which I could easily go over 40, which are interesting to me. There are lots of older and newer black metal bands to go with, and also some really cool death metal ones, and even some trash ones. But, like I said, this lineup is not gonna be final one, they're gonna be changes. But even if you go through this list, Cadaver from Norway playing old school death metal, Mörgruning from Sweden, black metal, I'm just skipping a lot of bands here, Whitehead from Finland, Akitsa from Canada, is it Canadian band? I think it is. But I don't trust my memory anymore. Then we have more Finnish bands, even Doom with Shape of Despair, industrial black metal with Borgne. We have Hecate Enthroned, something like very, very 1990s. We have bands like Niflheim, or then we have Seth from France playing there, black metal Venom Inc. doing Venom stuff, obviously. We have some more Finnish names here. Some are bigger and some are smaller. We have controversial bands such as Graveland and Inquisition. We have really cool kind of a rocking band Alpha Hanne, which did just a wonderful debut years ago. We have more or less unknown bands like Commander Agares. We have cool names such as Zuder, and you know, a lot of names here. Even Tenebrae, the old band from Finland, is doing a kind of a special gig here. But like I said, this is a list that is constantly changing. For example, people lately noticed that first Melakesk cancelled their thing they were saying going to a studio, and there was already a lot of speculation whether they're cancelling their gigs because, you know, some other bands over here, but that seems not to be the case. However, what happened with Samael and Sodom being cancelled from this original lineup is that, well, Samael, I think they made a political stance and they don't want to play with bands that are in contradiction with their ideology, and that is people having, well, right-wing thoughts. Sodom then again was pushed, against the wall by people who are very fierce about these political statements. And first it seemed like Sodom is going to do this gig, but I guess having a lot of pushing around from United States of America and German people, I guess, being a German band, having a nasty past with the whole right-wing stuff. I mean, go to the 1940s and you pretty much understand what's going on. They cancelled. And there is lots of speculation and even people on each other's throats because of all these cancellations. Now, while I totally kind of understand some bands cancelling because of ideological things and all that stuff, I don't think it's that simple, really. Probably needs another video to go this through properly. But, what is problematic is that, okay, you have a band and you want to play on stage with bands that you don't share your ideology, worldview, whatever, politics. Then you get easily labeled as guilty by association, which to a certain degree might be a little bit truthful. Careful now. But in fact, if you have friends who disagree with you in political statements, does it become contagious? It's not COVID, it's not epidemic. Sometimes people define certain celebrities and bands and artists and musicians and whatever artists because what they have said in ideological grounds, political views and all that stuff. But how I see it is that if people are like 100% something, only certain part of that band or people or whatever is that political thing. There's so many factors that come into play, but people sometimes, are more like majoring the minors, if you get my drift. Now, obviously, I respect that people make their mind or stand behind their ideology, whatever, even if it makes sometimes people look like very, very ridiculous. But what I do not like is that people are threatened and blackmailed into doing something. Like this cancel thing is sometimes, more often than not, exactly that. Like people are basically making threats or, just putting these equation marks between something very, very ridiculous. For example, I'm totally against racism, homophobia, sexual oppression and all that shit. It's shitty behavior. It's toxic. It's stupid. It's fucking annoying. But that doesn't mean going to a festival which might have bands that might represent partially or behind the band some of these ideas. If I were to, if it was to go only with people I can fully agree, I would be all the time alone by myself. Why? Because there is not a single person on this planet who I can fully agree with. Like for me, one of the most important things in life is the freedom of speech and freedom of thought. I do not like religions, for example, and I can still tolerate bands or people having religious thoughts, whether they play on stage or write books or whatever, make music. Same goes for a political stance. I hate all kind of extreme political stances, whether they come from left or right. And I still have friends who are left and who are right. I don't agree with them politically, but I don't make that as my problem. So for me, it's like I can listen to the very same day Napalm Death as I can listen to bands like Nocturnal Mortem. Very, very much like opposite directions in terms of bands and political views. So what? My point here is, when I listen to music, I listen for the notes, the sound, the production, how the vocals are done. Some of the lyrics might be really, really annoying, really stupid. Sometimes I can relate to that. But that's not a deal breaker for me. For example, I dislike Christianity and people who believe in God and do heinous acts because of that. Does that stop me, like for example, not interviewing bands like that or listening to their music or seeing them on stage? Fuck, no. Why? Because I don't think that's the only defining factor. Now, I don't ask you to change your political view. I don't ask you to do that for your friend or your family or whatever. If you don't like certain bands, taking part of the lineup, just don't go there. But don't push bands you like against the wall, because that is actually just history repeating itself. Like, remember in the 1980s, when bands like, or early 90s, when bands like Rotting Christ and Cannibal Corpse were banned, just because of the name of the band, just because some covers, just because of lyrics. I think Germany was actually one of those leading countries when it comes to banning bands based on how they look or sound or what kind of covers they have. So, do you really want to go pushing all the way? Yeah, it starts with bands with right-wing ideology, I get it. But it doesn't really stop there. I mean, once you give this whole idea, you let the rope slip between your fingers, it's a slippery slope. That's exactly what happened in 1940s Germany. It starts with this person and it moves to that, and there you go. So we don't want to go there. I understand that you don't like something, that you need to fight for that, and whatever. But still, be more understanding. If you are not open for conversation, if you don't listen to what people are saying, but you just keep talking to yourself, much like I am doing here, but I'm ready to read your comments. I'm ready to have that conversation on Rauta's Discord server, for example. If you're not listening, there will be no conversation. Nothing will be progressing. People will be just stuck in their foxholes, and things will get on worse. The more radical bands, whatever political views they have, will still have their fests, will still have their events, but only digging more underground, and there is no way to stop it. But by making events like Steelfest looking like one of them is just plain fucking ridiculous. So people should get their facts straight, not be guided by emotions. Check your facts, check your privileges, and don't be a douchebag. Thanks for listening, have a good day, and stay metal.